245.
All right. Okay, everyone, a couple things. Please mute your audio if you would. I can hear some people banging around over there just a little bit. All right. And we're gonna start right now. And as John or as Nick mentioned, we're going to be doing a giveaway to the GRE boot camp, and we're going to have a little bit more information on that as we go forward in the presentation. But you are all here to find out the 3 biggest secrets of the GRE, and that's good because I'm going to tell you what they are. And more importantly, each of these secrets has a strategy that goes with it. And it's a strategy that you're going to be able to implement today in order to raise your score. So the agenda, we're going to do some quick introductions. I'm going to tell you the 3 secrets and the 3 strategies. I'm also going to give you a bonus strategy because that's the kind of guy I am. And then we're going to wrap it up with the final word. So I promise this is going to be the most boring slide I'm going to show you today. This is about me. My name is Bruce. I've been coaching the GMAT and the GRE for over 10 years. I've founded my own company. I've done it with UCLA. I've got a Wharton MBA, and sometimes I talk to the press about test prep and admissions into grad school and that sort of thing. Okay, let's get into it. So secret number 1, the GRE actually doesn't test what you think it tests. And this is a big deal. So the GRE is not really a test of your math skills. It's not really a test of your reading skills. And it's not even really a test of your vocabulary, although frankly, it's a little bit more of a test of your vocabulary than it is of other things. But even then, it's not that much a test of your vocabulary. And I know what you're thinking, well, Bruce, what about all those math, reading, and vocabulary questions? It's not testing those. What exactly is being tested? And that's a great question. So here's how the GRE works, and this is what it really tests. So about 35% of your success, about 35% of what the GRE tests is knowing stuff. It is knowing, math, and it is knowing reading. It's knowing those exponent rules, right? It's knowing how to pull out a conclusion from a reading passage. But here's the secret here. Basically, there's nothing on the GRE vocabulary accepted you didn't learn past 9th grade. No one's going to ask you to do differential equations. No one's going to ask you to interpret Moby Dick. And if I ask some of you, I'm sure some of you have had this experience where you're trying to raise your score and you're studying more and more English and more math, but your score just isn't budging. That's really, really common because basically you're studying for about 1/3 of the test. And to get the higher scores, studying more and more just doesn't help you. Your score gets stuck. About 40% of this test is question interpretation. And what I mean by that is in each question, there are actually markers that are going to tell you exactly what you've been asked, which, isn't always obvious. And more importantly, are going to point you to exactly how the test wants you to approach a question in order to go through the steps and get to the right answer fast. And that's definitely not intuitive. This question interpretation piece, that's the key to unlocking top scores. And we're going to talk more about that. And finally, they simply ask too many questions and they don't give you enough time. So really having a deep understanding of how the scoring algorithm works and how you need to trade off time for right answers is key. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But the very first thing we're going to talk about, because this is the major shift in your thinking that's going to get you to those elite scores, is we need to talk about how to take the stuff that you already know and actually make it show up as points on the test. And I want to give you a couple examples of how this works. So let's say you're given this question. Example, hey, if you roll a single die 3 times, what are the chances of rolling a 5 at least once? And you're looking at that and saying, look, hey, this is no problem. This is obviously a probability problem, and you're right. And every single person here knows the probability formula. It's the number of desired outcomes of the number of total possible outcomes. So this question is going to be a piece of cake. All you have to do is figure out how many ways there are to roll this dice and get a 5 at least once. It can't be that hard. Well, you can get a 5 on your first roll, then not a 5 on your second roll, and not a 5 on your third roll. That'll do it. You know what? You can not get a 5 on your first roll, get a 5 on the second roll, and get a 5 on the third roll. That would do it too. You know what? You could get all 3 5s. That would be getting a 5 at least once. Or you could get not a 5, then a 5, or a 5 and a 5, then not a 5. But what about a not a 5, and a not a 5? You have found yourself in a combinatorics nightmare. Even if you get every single possibility, every single one of these is going to have a different numeric value, then you got to add them up. This is just basically impossible to do it this way. But if you understand what the question is asking you, and you see this at least, that is huge, because at least is a marker in the question that's telling you very explicitly to do this. It wants you to think of the question like this. The chance of something not happening plus the chance of that thing happening has to equal 1, has to equal 100%. That means that 1 minus the chance of something not happening must equal the chance of it happening. If you see the word at least in a probability question, they want you to use the framework 1 minus it not happening equals happening. And this question becomes very simple. What is the chance of not getting a 5 on your first roll? 5 out of 6. What's the chance of not getting a 5 on your second roll? 5 out of 6. And your chance of not getting 5 on the third roll? 5 out of 6. So you need not a 5, not a 5, not a 5. So we multiply these things together. The chance of not getting a 5 on all 3 rolls, 125 over 216. So the chance of getting a 5 must be 1 minus 125 over 216, or 91 over 216. How much of that had to do with the probability formula? Well, a little bit. But how much of it had to do with interpreting that question and knowing for sure when you see at least, you have to set up the framework 1 minus chance not happening equals chance of happening. That was the whole thing. Those types of markers and those frameworks all over the test. And that's what allows you to unlock top scores. And it's not just with the quant, it's with the verbal too. So I'm going to give you a reading comp question here, but I'm not even going to give you the passage. We're just going to look at the questions or at the answer choices, and we're going to be able to knock out huge numbers of answer choices just based on how the test works and the markers were given. So this is asking, it can be inferred from the passage, I'm not going to give you the passage, that in a US presidential election, the selection of the candidate most popular among the voters, okay, well, let's look at answer choice A, is more important than other results that might be generated from the use of a particular election system. We really don't like this answer choice, and here's why. Is more important than other results. Here's the thing. Comparison answer choices are almost always wrong. And here's why. For this to be right, first of all, we have to be given objective data on how important the selection of the candidate most popular among voters is. And then we have to be given kind of the same objective data, right? So we can compare it to how important the other results. I don't even know what other results are. It's way too vague. There's no way A is going to be right. What about B? B says the selection of the candidate most popular among voters would be attained through the use of the approval voting for US presidential elections. There are 2 words in here that immediately knock this answer choice out. Would be. Would be is a 100% guarantee. This thing is saying if you use the approval voting, you are 100% guaranteed to always elect the president who got the most votes. 100% guarantees are way too strong. There's no way that's going to be the right answer choice. C has occurred only in a minority of US presidential elections since 1880. Maybe that's a fact you can check. Those are exactly the types of things that you want to keep in the consideration set. D is critical to the maintenance of the democratic process. So here we go again with really strong language and really vague terms. Unless the author had clearly defined democratic process, it's just this vague term. Things that are really strong and really vague, not right. E, might be. Boy, we like the word might be achieved through multiple rounds of elections. Might be, yeah, we keep that in the consideration set. So we started out with 5 answer choices without even reading the passage. Just by knowing how the GRE works, we eliminated 3. That's going to be pretty common. Okay. So it's when you get good at all 3 things, when you know stuff, because you got to know all that stuff you've forgotten since 9th grade, right? You got to do a rigorous review on all of that. It's super important. When you understand exactly those markers in the question. You know exactly what you're supposed to do. And when you understand the test strategy, how the scoring algorithm works, when you get all good at all three, that is when scores pop up to the elite level. That's when people start posting 325 plus scores. And the question is, okay, how do I get there? And there are a couple ways to get there. And one of the ways you can get there is you can get a little help. And it doesn't have to be super expensive to get a little help. And I'm going to have Nick talk a little bit about that. And the other way to get there is I can show you some ways, some strategies that you can implement right now, today, to start raising your skills on all three of those. But first, let's talk a little bit about boot camp.
I'm excited to tell you all about this. So this GRE bootcamp is the ultimate crash course to help you rocket your scores up, especially here in the next 6 weeks. So we're starting next Tuesday. This is coming right up, and we're really, really excited for it. Bruce is teaching 12 sessions. So this is 12 workshops that go much more in depth, much more tactical, even than we're hearing today. 90-minute sessions with Bruce that all come with curated assignments, modules, and all the test prep materials you'll need, all created and curated by Bruce. I dare say our best test prep, GRE prep tutor on Leland. And here's just a quick look at the outline. We're diving through everything from the quant to the verbal, and all the strategies that Bruce has alluded to. So we're not just going to be studying math, studying verbal. It will be so much more tactical than that. And I think, again, this is the best way to prepare for the exam, especially if you have one coming up here in the next few months. And we're actually giving a $400 discount on the price of admission through the giveaway. So if you haven't yet entered the giveaway, I'll send the link here in the chat. One of you here tonight will win free admission to the boot camp, and everyone else, just for being here, will get a $400 discount on the boot camp. That's exclusive to attendees of tonight's event. And again, Bruce is fantastic. This is an awesome way to get all the support you'll need. And we would love to have you in the boot camp with us.
Great, thanks, Nick. This is everything that's in the boot camp, and I would love to see you guys there. But let's talk a little bit now about some ways that you guys on your own can go from this idea of studying stuff, right, studying the material, to studying the questions. And kind of how do you do that? And there's one thing that is kind of, it makes this a little tricky, and it's this. There's only one thing we know for sure about any question that you see in a book, any question you get in a course, any question you see on a practice test. Only thing we know for sure about that question, it's guaranteed not to be on the actual test. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means every practice question you do has to have two goals. And the first goal is you have to learn how to get that question right. But more importantly, you have to use that question to learn how that question works, right? Spot those markers we were talking about. Oh, at least means I need to approach it that way. There are certain things in answer choices for reading comp that I know are always wrong, so that you can get every question that works like that question right. And what you find out is all these questions underneath start to share huge numbers of things. So they use these same kind of approaches over and over and over and over again. So the logical question is, okay, so how do I get down to learn how that question works? And here's what I want you to do. Here's the strategy. Anytime you miss any practice question for any reason, I want you to redo that question 3 times. And here's why. When you do a question for the first time, the data you get is, can I do this question? And don't get me wrong, like that's essential data to get, right? You gotta know that. But if the answer to that question is no, you haven't done anything to bring yourself up the learning curve. The second time you do a question, you get to focus on that particular tricky part that messed you up. All that other stuff you weren't sure about, yeah, I did that right. Now there's this one bit you get to focus in on. The third time you do a question, Then you get to see, well, how did they set me up for that? What language did they use? What markers do I need to be sensitive to so that when I see that same setup again, and you will absolutely see that same setup again and again and again, that you can nail that question. And I'm not just talking here. I actually see new questions almost every day, and usually I get them right. But look, I don't always get everything right all the time. And if I miss a question, I always redo the question 3 times, because if I only do it twice, I kind of know there's something out there that can kind of bite me in the butt, but, and I'll probably get it. When I do it the 3rd time, then I have it locked down. I'm like, bring it. That 3rd time is really the charm. Here's the other secret. You don't need to get that many questions right. Here's the thing. Your goal is not to get a perfect score on the GRE. Your goal is to get into business school, and those are 2 different things. Let's take a look at how the scoring algorithm actually works and how you actually have to perform. So the second strategy is this. Stop trying to get all the questions right. Believe it or not, you're actually hurting your score when you try and do that. So here's how the GRE works. So everybody on the quant and verbal gets essentially the same first section, and it's 12 questions, and it's a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. And depending on how you do on that first section, you're either going to trigger a hard section, and that usually happens when you miss about 3 questions. And the hard verbal or quant, that's 15 questions, and you really need to trigger the hard section. That's how you get the 160 plus scores. If you miss about 5 questions, you trigger the medium section. That tends to top you off at around 159. Sometimes, depending on the test and which combination of questions you get right and wrong, sometimes you can get a 160, but generally it's pretty tough. If you miss more than 6, that triggers the easy section, and that tends to cap your score at a much lower level. So let's take a look at what it actually takes then. What are we talking about to trigger the hard section and get the score that you want? Okay, so if you miss about 3, and sometimes you can miss 4, you're going to trigger that hard quant or verbal section. Now, once you're in that hard section, if you miss about 5, and again, it depends a little bit on which ones you miss, how hard they are, but if you miss about 5, that's a score of about 160. If you miss about 3, now you're parking scores in that 162 to 163 range. And for those of you who want to go right to those top schools and want to hit, 325 plus, this is where you need to park your scores. So that means your goal on that first section is basically to miss 3 or fewer. So that's about 75% of those first questions, right? On the second section, depending again what your kind of goals are, you're missing like 3 to 5. That's like around 67 to about 80%. So you don't have to get these all right. And in fact, it's important that you don't try to get them all right. As you're doing the test, you have 2 things that are equally precious to you: correct answers and time. And you're constantly trading off one for the other. And the better you get at trading off time for correct answers, the higher your score will get. Trying to get all the answers correct, that's a trap. That's what the GRE is hoping that you do, because what's going to happen is you're going to sink 4 minutes into question number 9, and by the time you get to question 12, which is a question you could absolutely nail, you have 20 seconds left and you can't do it. Instead, what you want to be doing is I want you to think of each one of these sections as having an easy test and a hard test. The easy test simply means these are questions that you know how to do. And I want you to collect every single darn point that you can, take an easy test. And then I want you to go back and take the hard test. And those are questions that you skip that you find harder. Then go back and try and get as many of those questions as you can. So that's the kind of the skinny on test strategy. And it's really important. Don't try and get all of the questions right. Secret 3, and this is quant specific, but this is a big deal. The truth is there are only 3 reasons you're ever going to miss a quant question on the test. First reason is you're going to miss some stupid arithmetic or algebra. You're going to make some stupid mistake because in the heat of the moment, 11 plus 12 is going to look like 54 to you. Second, you're going to misread. You're going to miss that X can't be negative, or you're going to miss that, that they wanted X and you gave them Y, something like that. And finally, they're going to ask you a question that's so hard, you're simply not going to be able to find the next step. Now, these first two reasons I want to talk about, it's really important. You are not making these mistakes because you're not being careful. That's terrible advice. Being more careful is terrible advice. You're taking the GRE. I know that you're being careful. These are actually ingrained in the test. The test is actually set up to get you to make these two mistakes. So here's kind of how our brains work. So human brains are actually pretty amazing conceptual machines, right? We can quite literally observe the motion of planets and invent calculus. That's a pretty incredible thing. We're also pretty incredible executional machines. There was a time back in college where I could, then actually solve those calculus questions. I'm not sure I could do that anymore. What breaks our brains is when we try and do this conceptual at the same time that we try and do the executional. That's when we start making mistakes. Basically, what happens is we start missing details. We start missing executional, those executional mistakes, those dumb mistakes start to creep in. So in some ways, I realize this is the least helpful slide ever created because I just said, well, gee, Bruce, thanks for showing me why I'm so terrible at this. Do you have anything that can help me? Yeah, I certainly do. So this is the strategy. Every time you do a quant question, I want you to do these 7 steps. And the truth is, you're probably doing these 7 steps anyway. But as we're going to see, it's really important that you do them in this order. So here are the steps. Number 1, I want you to read. Just read the question. Don't pick up a pencil. Don't assign variables. Don't do anything. Just read. Step 2, panic. You're allowed to panic exactly once. You're allowed to panic not in step 2. It's a little bit, kidding, not kidding thing. Because sometimes you look at this and you're like, wait a minute, you want to know how many machines it takes to do what? Perfectly natural part of this process. They try and freak you out with these questions. 3, I want you to go back through the question, find out exactly what you've been asked to do. And this is the important part. Write it down. If you can write it down in math, that's great, right? I need 1999 sales minus 1998 sales over 1998 sales. Great. If you just write it down in English, that's fine too, but you need to write it down. 4, make it simple. So if the GRE's job is to give you information in the most confusing ways possible, and it is, your job is to use these markers and these frameworks that we've been talking about to get this confusing language into equations that you can actually solve or into very, very simple math phrases that you can test. 5, this is where everyone thinks like GRE quant starts. This is price of entry. This is the algebra. That's all that knowing stuff that we were talking about. This is all this 9th grade high school math. Now that you got the equation set up, solve for X. And most of you guys are going to be able to do that in about 9 seconds. Your algebra skills are probably better than mine. After you solve for X, figure out what the heck you've actually solved for. It's not always obvious. And compare that to what you wrote down and make sure it's the same thing. And let's face it, sometimes it is. Sometimes they've asked for X, you solve for X, you're done. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes they want 1 minus X or something like that. If you need to adjust, then I want you to adjust. These 7 steps alone are likely to increase your score. And why is this so effective? First of all, look at how many times you're reading the question. You read it once in step 1. You read it again in step 3 when you pull out exactly what you've been asked to do. You basically go line by line through the question in step 4 to get it into a framework that you can solve. And then you touch the question again at the end to make sure that you're actually giving them what they want. There's another reason why this works really well. notice that steps 1 through 4 are all conceptual. I've got to take this mass of words that I don't understand, and I somehow have to get these into an equation. Okay. After you've done that, steps 5 through 7 are all executional. As much as we can, right? And it's the world and it's the GRE. So not everything's always super clean, but as much as possible, we want you to separate the conceptual part of the question with the executional part of the question. And there's one more thing that's worth noting. As the questions get harder and harder, the game is won and lost in step 3 and in step 4. And this is difficult conceptually or executionally when you're on the test, because you've got that little like clock in your head, right? Ticking down. And you've got that little voice saying, you only have a minute 45, keep going, go, go, go. And that's what's forcing you into your algebra before you set everything up. If you set things up, if you take more time to get to steps 3 and 4, trust yourself that you're going to be able to solve it very, very quickly. But if you jump too fast into the solving phase, you're going to end up with a mess. All right. So I promised you guys a 4th strategy, which I am absolutely going to reveal to you. But before I do we have a winner for the big contest, Nick?
Yes, we do. The winner of the giveaway is Kirti. Kirti, super excited to have you in the boot camp. It will be a blast to have you, and for everyone else. I wish we could just give it out to everybody, but we did give a discount to everyone. So take a look at the text I sent, and definitely take advantage of that. It's a huge and event exclusive discount, and this will be an amazing boot camp. Lots and lots of value, and starting here soon. So I'll reach out and text you about it if you sign up for the giveaway, and let me know your thoughts, what you're thinking about going into it.
Cool. Thank you very much, Nick. The bonus strategy, which is guaranteed to increase your score and massively increase your studying efficiency. Guys, please stay off the internet. Stay off of Reddit. I know it's the hardest thing in the world, but the internet exists to do exactly 3 things. It exists to lie to you, it exists to undermine your confidence, and it exists to misdirect your focus. And that there's nothing positive in there for you. Everybody on the internet has scored perfectly on the GRE. And you know for sure, because people that score perfectly on the GRE, they have a lot of time to hang around Reddit to get other people to tell them how cool they are. But the other thing that's really happens when people do this is people say, oh yeah, I was so cool because I was able to, to solve this 3 overlapping set question that I saw on the GRE. They did not see a 3 overlapping set question on the GRE. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take all your time and focus trying to figure out how to do 3 overlapping sets, which takes an enormous amount of time and energy to figure out. And it's not going to show up on the test. So please stay off the internet. If you need some help, please talk to somebody at Leland. We will absolutely tell you what you actually need to study. And guys, if you are interested in the boot camp, I would love to see you in the boot camp. I'm super excited about it. If some of you are saying, hey, you know what, Bruce, do you do private? I do. And if you want to sign up and understand, what it might be to work privately, we do 15-minute intro calls. I'd love to work with you and talk to you that way as well. And guys, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for spending a half an hour with me talking about the GRE. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.